For those of you that were here in the previous session, you will find that this is very close to the previous session and creates for me a bigger responsibility because we had a high-level content previously. So I'm a software developer, and I came to see the regulation terms using explicitly end-to-end encryption. So I thought that I had something to say about this because I have been working with implementing end-to-end encryption on web development for the last 6 years. So I was interested about that, and I went to read the text of the regulation to see how I could understand that, even if I'm not a specialist on laws and policy. I was interested on trying to find out more. So this is the privacy, the secrecy, and the contradiction of NIS2 framework. NIS, for those that are not familiar with it, it's the Network Information Security. Number 2, we can discuss this later. Normally, software developers hate this kind of namings because if you have number 2, soon you have number 3, and so on. So it should be better if the law was written according to Git controversial, but we are not there yet. In my professional life, I have been working with this model that is called protected content. Just this name is very broad, but if you put together with this Drupal, D-R-U-P-A-L, this is a PHP-based content management system, very wide used. So I have been working with this model that provides a way of end-to-end encryption web-based. So it's basically the implementation of OpenPGPGS, that is a JavaScript library that does mostly, more or less, what OpenSSL does, but it does inside the browser with JavaScript. So it's a very nice way of distributing the possibility of the software, the possibility of mathematics for the end users in their own devices. As long it's very safe, as long as the device is not compromised. So in the previous section, Marcel was talking about this scanning in the device before the content is dispatched. So this is really difficult to prevent if the browser, for example, if it is taking everything you type in a text field for the objective of implementing autocompletion, that is something that people like. But if you are typing every character and this character is being sent away, you are not protected anymore. So if this kind of technique spreads, and it looks like that has spread already, even with protected content, you are not really protected. So we would have to emphasize on which kind of browser we are using and restrict the usage of only to safe browsers. Well, this is another stuff. What I would like to go forward is I just talking about, again, this number 2 in the NIS. It came to replace a previous regulation that had some problems. One problem that, perhaps the biggest problem that motivated this new regulation to be drafted was that the previous framework allowed member states to have contradictory regulations, meaning one member state would say to a company to do something, and the other member state would say to the same company to do a thing that goes against the previous. But if this company works across the two countries, it would have a problem. So NIS2 came in one sense to try to fix this kind of problem. And it is, therefore, something that looks at industry, looks at economy. But people is also important for society. And the regulations we create should also look at the interest of people. So, and this is also included in the efforts of the regulators. And what we came to see is that, as was spoken previously, we have these cryptographic wars. But the cryptographic war makes sense because it's about a conflict of two values, important to people. So one side, we want privacy, and perhaps we should even go further beyond the privacy concept, and we should admit we really want secrecy. Why not? Because it looks like that privacy is for the poor people and secrecy is for the rich people, or privacy is for the people who just want to share the pictures of the cats. That does not matter, and secrecy is for important thing. So in my opinion, we should level this concept and admit that secrecy is something that everyone should be able to have. But by another hand, we also have a wish of living in a world with less crime. So how can we put the two things together? Because sometimes crime could benefit from secrecy, right? So a very sad example of crime being committed in society. There are many types of crimes, but one crime is this abuse of children and the sharing of images of abusing of children. So this is a very recent news from Belgium. There was a teacher working with children from 3 to 6 years old. This teacher was abusing the children in the toilets of the school, in recording it and sharing this atrocious content across with a certain community. So United States had access to the metadata of the content, probably the entire content, whatever was the place he was posting those things, and they find in the metadata of the video the exactly location. So Belgian police was warned about it. They made an operation in the school, and they got the guy in the act. So this is something that was possible because information was leaking. If it wasn't leaking, it would not have been possible. So these are two legitimate wishes, legitimate aims that we as a society have, right? So in the NIS2 framework, we have this, it is divided in pieces of text called recital. I wasn't aware of this term, but the recital 95 explicitly mentions end-to-end encryption. So I'm going to try to go through it word by word. I will try to make it not too boring, but I think it's important. Also, before jumping into that, I have to say that 3 months ago, perhaps, when I proposed this session, I wasn't aware of some things that I learned from 3 months ago to now. One thing is, the member states have certain freedom on implementing the regulation Commission defines. So they don't need to follow exactly word by word what was contained in the NIS2 framework. Belgium, for example, in its implementation of the regulation, does not mention at all end-to-end encryption. They mention encryption, but not end-to-end encryption. So this is the Gestalt 95. It's a quite verbose way of speaking that is very common in the texts for written by lawyers. But allow me to read it all, because after reading it all, we are going to cut a lot of words, and we will finish with 4 statements, very, very clear statements, taking ipsis literis from this text. So I'm going to remove everything that does not matter for the idea of talking about end-to-end encryption. Allow me to read. In order to safeguard the security of public electronic communications networks and publicly available electronic communication services, the use of encryption technologies, in particular end-to-end encryption, as well as data-centric security concepts such as cartography, segmentation, tagging, access policy, and access management, and automated access decisions should be promoted. Where necessary, the use of encryption, in particular end-to-end encryption, should be mandatory for providers of public electronic communications networks or of public available electronic communication services in accordance with the principles of security and privacy by default and by design for the purpose of this directive. The use of end-to-end encryption should be reconciled with the member states' power to ensure the protection of their essential security interests and public security, and to allow for the prevention, investigation, detection, and persecution of criminal offenses in accordance with union law. However, this should not weaken end-to-end encryption, which is a critical technology for the effective protection of data and privacy and the security of communications. Another thing that I did not know when I proposed this session is that I would come with a positive proposition, because in the beginning I thought this was a paradox that we could just expose. And I have to say that I have also a background in philosophy, and philosophers love paradoxes. They live their lives just talking about paradox and not necessarily trying to resolve the paradox. By definition, they should not. But at the end of this presentation, I'm going to propose a solution, a possibility of having these two objectives together in a context that makes the society, puts society in an uncomfortable place. You will see. So let's start by cutting some words. For example, the first, in order to safeguard, that is just empty text. We can just cut that in order. So the next slide, I'm going to cut something else. So I'm starting very slowly just for you to see the method, right? So the next slide, of public electronic communications networks and publicly available electronic. Let's cut that, all of that, and just leave communication services. So to safeguard the security of communication services, right? But even services we can cut away, because we are not talking about in which other context we could have communications that is not service. So that is just empty word. Let's cut that. And then we have the use of encryption technologies, in particular end-to-end encryption. So let's cut encryption technologies in particular. This is just empty words, and let's focus on end-to-end encryption. And what comes also after, as well as data-centric security concepts such as cartography. I don't know why cartography is here. Segmentation, tagging, access. Let's forget about all of that. I just want to focus on end-to-end encryption. So cutting that away. And what comes as a result, that should be promoted. So, in other words, end-to-end encryption should be promoted. Where necessary, the use of encryption, in particular, end-to-end encryption, should be mandatory for providers. Let's see what we can cut away again. So, providers of public electronic communication networks of publicly available electronic communications, again, we have. Let's cut the services again. And now we are going to another subject. This previous cut is why I'm able to cut in accordance with the principles of security and privacy. Why I would not be in accordance with those securities. And this is already inside the concept of end-to-end encryption. So it's redundant to have it here, as lawyers like to write, like that. For the purpose of this directive, let's cut that away also, because we can even imagine purposes that are bigger than Europe in our minds, right? So we don't need to be restricted by the idea of this directive. So the use of end-to-end encryption, obviously it's the use of how I would have end-to-end encryption if it was not for using it. So let's cut the use, and should be reconciled with the member states' power to ensure the protection of their essential security interests in public security, and what that comes to allow for the prevention, investigation, blah, blah, blah. So let's cut all of that, but several things that are being protected: prevention, investigation, detection, and prosecution. This centralizes in one single thing: detection, because everything else depends on detection. So we are really talking about detection. So cutting everything away, we have detection of criminal offenses. And finally, however, this should not weaken. Let's see what we can cut there. However, this should not weaken end-to-end encryption, which is a critical technology for the effective protection of data and privacy and the security of. This is the opinion of the legislator. I don't care about what they think about how they are going to define end-to-end encryption. So let's cut that away. So we come to have these 4 statements: to safeguard the security of communications, the use of end-to-end encryption should be promoted. Very clear, right? Now we have, thank you. Now we have end-to-end encryption should be mandatory for communications by default and by design. Very clear. We have end-to-end encryption should allow for the detection of criminal offenses. We can even cut a little bit more of text. So what we can, the last one, however, this should not be weaken end-to-end encryption. What is really problematic, but we come back to that at the end. So now let's erase the cutted away text like this. It's the magic of animation, frame by frame, and I don't like that those communications, 2 places. We have communication in the green text, we have communication in the blue text. If we are talking about encryption, obviously this is about communication. Let's cut that away. So I'm going to cut that, and now I have even less text, more easy to understand. To safeguard the security, we are talking about encryption. Obviously, it's communication security. End-to-end encryption should be promoted. By the way, security in communication is security in general. So we are really talking about security in general here. And now, let's put some numbers, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's put those things, yeah, here I have, yes. This word refers, it's a pronoun, refers to the previous statement, number 3. So let's put this as, write this as if it was more formal text. So let me replace that pronoun by number 3, because now I have the number 3. So, however, number 3 should not weaken end-to-end encryption. So at the end we have these 4 statements. So to safeguard the security, end-to-end encryption should be promoted. End-to-end encryption should be mandatory by default and by design. End-to-end encryption should allow for the detection of criminal offenses. However, 3 should not weaken end-to-end encryption. Now, this is really difficult to accomplish, right? How can I make it how can I create a word where these 2 apparently contradictory statements can be true at the same time? So, and now comes the more propositional part of my talk. Let's see. what I can come with. First, before that, when the regulation was being written, there are these stages where regulators ask the society what they think about of the draft. This last statement should not weaken end-to-end encryption. It looks like, for me, came from a feedback given by the Federation of German Industries. So at this phase of regulators asking society, what do you think about the draft we are writing? The Federation of German Industries wrote, policymakers should refrain from measures that could weaken encryption. We strictly oppose any technical solutions such as backdoors or master key, as their pure existence would weaken encryption in the EU. Europe needs not fewer but more trustworthy IT solutions to swiftly implement the digital transformation in administration, industry, and society. To this end, European legislators should be proponents of strong encryption. Well, this was observed, and the number 4 statement came to be written. It's a solution, not really, right? It's just putting the words with no possible meaning for them. So, what, in my opinion, could be a solution? It's a solution very hard to society to digest. Before the presentation, I was thinking about a metaphor. Imagine that me and my wife, we have an agreement that is every text I sent to my wife, every message I sent to her, every letter. I think no one writes letters anymore, but if I have to write some letter to my wife, I will, in common accordance with her, send an exact copy of that text to the mother of my wife. So this would be a very weird arrangement for this society of 3 persons. But perhaps this is what we want as a society. What I'm trying to say, we don't want violate communications. We should not want, we should not think that violating communication is acceptable. We should, in my opinion, on the other way, transparently include a third part. This is one possibility. But I don't know if society would accept this, the price of doing this, for the advantage of fighting crime. So, how this could happen? I would have one-to-one communication encrypted at client side. But transparently, let's say we decide that in the region where I live, there is someone for whom we are going to send everything we talk between us. Society wants that. I don't know if society, if this is made so transparent, so clearly, by naming the person, because this is also important. When we come to talk about private communication, we should have names of persons of flesh and bone, not institutions. So I would have, for example, the representative of the local law enforcement agents being named together with the name of my wife every time I send something to my wife. Is this what we want? It's very hard to say. But I think the solution is hard to get, it's hard to digest, but there is a technological solution that could include all these opposite wishes. And I think this is what I had to say. Let me see if I have something more here. Yeah, no, that's it.
Is this the first time you've brought this up? I mean, who government has listened to?
I'm a private entity, let's say, here, right now. I have been talking about end-to-end encryption many times in the last 5 years. I have been to more than 10 conferences, but always pointing, exposing the technology. And this is the first time I'm talking, exposing the philosophy of it.
I guess what I'm thinking is the answer may not be a third-party governmental entity, but a trusted entity. Like in the U.S. we call them maybe like maybe like a lawyer type situation where you entrust a copy of your will to them.
May I add another metaphor? We have doors in our houses, in our apartments, and we kind of accept that law enforcement personnel break down the door in case of they need. Why not? We don't, if the door had a spiritual value, if the door had life beyond the physical existence of the door, we would, in behalf of protecting the integrity of the door, hand keys to the police, right? So we don't do this because it's, first, we don't care that much about breaking down the door if it's needed. Secondly, we would not feel comfortable because, okay, I gave the key of my house to the police and they can come anytime they want, but they can already do that if they want, right? So in my opinion, or we trust the institutions or we don't trust the institutions. It's interesting that civil society could build a common trust that is parallel perhaps with the public institutions. It's an interesting idea. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions? If no, then we can conclude our today's session for the morning. And thank you for joining today. And now we have the lunch break. So, yeah, we're good to go. Thank you, Fernandes, again.